There's a crow perched on your fence right now. Maybe you've seen it before. Maybe it's even thrown you a piece of bread. What you probably don't know is that it already knows your face. It's filed you away, stored you somewhere in that dark little head. And if you've ever done something it didn't like, it hasn't forgotten. It won't forget. And it's already told others. This isn't a legend. It's what scientists discovered when they decided to take crows seriously. And what they discovered shook everything we thought we knew about what a bird's brain is capable of.
In 2006, a University of Washington wildlife biologist named John Marsluff donned a rubber caveman mask and went out to capture crows on campus. Nothing unusual for a bird researcher, except for what happened next. His team captured, banded, and released the birds while he wore the mask. The whole process took only a few minutes. The crows emerged unharmed and were released exactly where they were captured. In any case, it was a minor incident. The crows didn't see things that way. For years afterward, the birds continued to react to anyone wearing that caveman mask, rebuking them, diving, and following them around campus. And this happened even though they only saw the mask twice a year for just a few hours at a time. To ensure it wasn't just a generalized fear of masks, Marsluff conducted a control test. His team also wore a Dick Cheney mask, a neutral face of someone who had never bothered the crows. The birds completely ignored the Cheney mask, but the moment someone put on the caveman mask, the reaction was immediate. Then came the part that really surprised the researchers. When two researchers approached a crow together, one wearing the dangerous mask and the other a neutral mask, the crow specifically went after the dangerous person, following them and leaving the other completely alone. They weren't reacting to the presence of a human. They were reacting to that human, to that specific face. Almost 7 years after the start of the study, the birds continued doing it. The same mask, the same fury, zero forgiveness.
This is where it stops being impressive and becomes something completely different. The crows that were captured in that original experiment were agitated. That was expected. What wasn't expected was what happened to the crows that weren't there. Young birds, birds that had never seen the caveman's mask, birds that had never been trapped, never been handled, never had a single bad experience with that face. They were rebuking him too. The information spread. Somehow, amidst the alarm calls, the collective behavior, and whatever one considers a conversation in a crow community, the news got through. This person is dangerous. Remember the face. And the younger birds obeyed. Scientists call this vertical social learning, knowledge passed down from one generation to the next, not through genes, but through behavior, through teaching. It's the same basic mechanism that allows human cultures to warn their children about things they have never personally experienced. Crows do this too, only with faces. Think about what this really means. If you had an unpleasant encounter with a crow today, scared one, startled another, took something it was watching, that memory doesn't die with the bird. It's passed on. The crow's chicks, raised in your neighborhood, may grow up already recognizing your face, already suspicious of you, already prepared. Researchers discovered this pattern repeating itself over several generations in a study conducted in Seattle. The resentment survived the birds that originated it. And it also works the other way around. Crows that learned from their parents that a certain human was safe, accessible, reliable, a source of food, treated that person differently, calmly, with something that, from the outside, seemed almost like recognition. Because that's exactly what it was. And if you are enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. At this point, a sensible person might ask, how? How does a bird manage to do that? The easy answer is that crows are intelligent, but that doesn't explain everything. Because the more scientists studied the crow's brain, the more they realized they were dealing with something that didn't fit the mold. For a long time, the scientific consensus was simple: large cerebral cortex, high intelligence. Mammals, especially primates, possess a highly developed cerebral cortex, and it is there that complex thought occurs. Birds do not. Therefore, the logic was that birds could not be performing anything very sophisticated in that region. This logic has proven to be wrong. What crows have instead of a cortex is a structure called the pallium, and theirs is packed with neurons in a way that has genuinely surprised neurobiologists. Corvid brains have approximately twice the number of neurons per gram compared to the brains of primates of similar mass. A crow's brain, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, performs cognitive operations that rival those of animals 10 times larger. Scientists studying them have begun using an expression that would have sounded absurd a few decades ago: feathered primates. And it's not just about the hardware, it's about what they do with it. Crows make tools. They don't just use them, they create them. There are records of crows shaping wire into hooks to extract food from containers. They understand cause and effect. They plan for the future. They deceive other animals. Controlled experiments have demonstrated that they are capable of thinking about their own thinking, an ability called metacognition, previously considered exclusive to humans and great apes. But here's the part that should really make you stop for a second. Crows and humans shared a common ancestor more than 300 million years ago. Any intelligence they possess wasn't inherited from us or from any close ancestor. They developed it from scratch, on a completely different evolutionary path, with a totally distinct brain structure. This isn't an intelligent bird. It's a second intelligence experiment, one that the universe conducted completely independently, and that arrived at some of the same conclusions.
If up until now everything has made crows seem calculating and cold, the next part will make them sound completely different. When a crow finds a dead member of its species, it doesn't fly away. It emits a call. And others come. They gather around the body, sometimes dozens of them, filling the air with noise, circling, observing. This can last 15, 20 minutes. Then, as if by a silent signal, they disperse. For a long time, people assumed this was mourning. And honestly, looking at the situation, it's hard not to assume that. But researchers Kaylee Swift and John Marsluff from the University of Washington decided to test what was really happening, and they did it in the most disturbing way possible. They asked volunteers to wear masks and carry a stuffed crow to areas where wild crows lived. Then they observed. The reaction was immediate and intense. The crows attacked the masked volunteers, relentlessly rebuking them and avoiding eating in that area for days on end. Even after a single encounter, they continued to rebuke anyone wearing that mask for up to 6 weeks. Then, Swift and Marsluff repeated the experiment with a dead pigeon instead of a dead crow. The crows barely reacted. They walked past it, went back to foraging, and moved on. It wasn't grief that motivated these gatherings. It was intelligence. It turned out that dead crows are information. They mark a location as dangerous. They identify threats. Predators, hostile humans, unsafe territory. The funeral is, in fact, a warning to the community, a way of saying something ended a life here. Find out what it was, remember it. The crows that participated in these encounters became more cautious, more alert, and more likely to avoid the area. Those that did not participate remained as calm as before. The information was only transmitted to those who attended. And there is still a detail that even the researchers had difficulty explaining. In a small number of tests, not many, but enough to be documented, the crows approached the body not with alarm, but with something that seemed like sexual interest. Swift observed this carefully in his research. It remains one of those discoveries that science has recorded, but has not yet been able to fully understand. Some things about crows, even today, still don't have a definitive answer.
Everything described so far refers to what happens when crows decide you're a threat. But the same memory that holds a grudge for a decade can also contain something more affectionate. In Seattle, there was a girl, she was 8 years old when it all started, who began leaving food for the crows in her neighborhood. Peanuts, mostly. She did it consistently, in the same places, at the same times. The crows noticed, and after a while, they started leaving food behind, small objects. a piece of foam with the word better printed on it, a corroded metal screw, a black button, a small piece of blue plastic. These weren't random debris carried by the wind. They were objects deliberately placed near the food after she had been there. Her mother documented everything. Scientists who analyzed the collection said it was consistent with the reciprocal behavior observed in corvids. The crows weren't just tolerating her, they were interacting with her. This type of interaction has been reported in enough cases, in enough different locations, for researchers to take it seriously. Crows taken to a rehabilitation and care center while injured return to the same property years later. Crows that are fed regularly begin to escort the person who feeds them, following them at a distance, observing, and appearing when that person leaves the house. It's not affection as we define it, but it's not anything either. The interesting thing is that the math doesn't add up. Crows, like most animals made for survival, give more weight to negative experiences than to positive ones. A single bad encounter can mark you for years. Constant kindness builds something slower, more gradual, but it builds. This means that the relationship you have with the crows in your neighborhood is already underway, whether you know it or not. Every time you pass by them, scare them, ignore them, or throw something in their direction, they are registering something you never agreed to be a part of. There's something subtly unsettling about all of this, and something subtly wonderful, depending on your point of view. Every crow you've ever passed on the street, everyone that's watched you from a wire, a fence, or the edge of your roof, it was paying attention in a way you almost certainly weren't. Filing away details, making calculations you'll never have access to. And somewhere in the social fabric of the local crow population, there may already be a version of you, a reputation, built from moments you've long forgotten, exchanged between birds you never noticed, surviving in memories that will endure beyond the very animals that carry them. Science leaves little room for doubt about this. These aren't simple creatures reacting to simple stimuli. They are social animals with long memories, cultural transmission, and the cognitive structure necessary to hold grudges, or develop something that functions remarkably similarly to trust. So the next time a crow looks at you, really looks, with that fixed, tranquil gaze, it's worth asking yourself something. You know what you think of crows, but what did you give them to think of you? If you're still here and you liked our content, subscribe to the channel so we can continue producing content for you. Hugs!